The sprawling Grayson estate with servants and trust funds, Tyler had clawed his way up from a trailer park in Ohio. His mother, a factory worker, had died when he was 16, leaving him to fend for himself. He put himself through college with construction jobs and military service, earning every dollar through sweat and determination. That grit had caught Amanda's attention 8 years ago at a charity gala where Tyler was working security. She was 24 then, fresh out of college and rebelling against her father's expectations. Tyler, 26 and hardened by life, represented everything her sheltered world lacked: danger, authenticity, raw masculinity. Robert Grayson, Amanda's father and heir to a shipping fortune, had disapproved from day one. "You're marrying beneath yourself," Robert had told Amanda before their wedding. Tyler had overheard through the door of Robert's study. "That boy has nothing to offer except muscles and attitude." But Amanda had been defiant then, claiming she loved Tyler's strength and independence. They'd married despite Robert's threats to cut her off, though he'd eventually relented when their son Dylan was born. The old man was obsessed with legacy and bloodline. Having a grandson softened his stance toward Tyler, though barely. Tyler had spent 7 years building his construction business from nothing, taking on the most dangerous jobs, working 18-hour days. His company, Brooks Construction, now employed 40 men and had contracts worth millions. He'd proven himself in Robert's world, but it had never been enough. The old man still looked at him like dirt on his shoe. The marriage had been passionate at first. Amanda was drawn to Tyler's intensity, his refusal to bow to anyone. In bed, she craved his dominance, his ability to make her feel small and vulnerable in ways her privileged upbringing never had. But as the years passed and Tyler's business consumed more of his time, cracks began to show. Amanda started attending more social events alone, reconnecting with old friends from her elite circle. She complained about Tyler's long hours, his calloused hands, his preference for beer over wine. The woman who once found his roughness exciting now seemed embarrassed by it at dinner parties and charity functions. Tyler noticed, but said nothing. He'd learned early that words were worthless. Actions mattered. He continued building his empire, believing that success would eventually earn Robert's respect and secure his family's future. He loved Dylan fiercely and thought Amanda's complaints were just temporary frustration. He was wrong about many things, but never about the importance of loyalty. In Tyler's world, betrayal was the ultimate sin, punishable by complete destruction. His father had abandoned his mother when Tyler was 10, leaving them in poverty. Tyler had sworn he'd never forgive such weakness, such cowardice. That moral code would prove crucial in the storm to come. Chapter 2. Cracks in the Foundation. The first real sign of trouble came 6 months before the inheritance announcement. Tyler had returned home early from a job site, his clothes covered in concrete dust, when he heard Amanda on the phone in her study. Her voice carried a tone he'd never heard before, intimate, conspiratorial. "I can't keep pretending much longer," she was saying. "Tyler suspects nothing, but Dylan is starting to ask questions about why I'm gone so much." Tyler had frozen outside the door, his hand on the knob. Through the crack, he could see Amanda pacing, one hand running through her blonde hair in a gesture he recognized as nervous excitement. "No, he's too focused on his business to notice anything else," she continued. "Besides, even if he did find out, what could he do? Father controls everything that matters in this town." The conversation had lasted another 10 minutes, filled with hushed promises and plans for secret meetings. Tyler had retreated to his workshop in the garage, his mind racing. The Amanda he'd married wouldn't have been capable of such deception, but people changed. Money and comfort had a way of corrupting even the strongest character. That night, he'd tested her, asking casual questions about her day, her plans for the weekend. She'd lied smoothly, mentioning book clubs and charity committees. Tyler had smiled and nodded, filing away every falsehood for future reference. Over the following weeks, Tyler began documenting Amanda's lies with methodical precision. He installed tracking software on her phone, small cameras in her car, and began following her occasionally. What he discovered made his blood run cold with rage. Amanda was having an affair with David Hensley, Robert's personal attorney and longtime family friend. Hensley was married with 2 teenage daughters, a pillar of the community who gave speeches about family values at the country club. The hypocrisy was staggering, but what truly enraged Tyler was the location of their meetings. They were using Dylan's bedroom in the old Grayson family cabin for their encounters, defiling the space where Tyler's son had played and slept during family visits. The thought of his wife and her lover rutting in his child's bed like animals filled Tyler with a murderous fury that took all his self-control to contain. But Tyler was a patient man when he needed to be. He'd learned in the military that emotion was the enemy of effective action. Instead of confronting them immediately, he began gathering evidence, planning his response with the same methodical approach he used for his most complex construction projects. He discovered that the affair had been going on for 2 years, starting shortly after Hensley's wife had been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. Amanda and David had bonded over the burden of caring for broken people, as Tyler overheard in one recorded conversation. They spoke about Tyler and David's wife as obstacles to their happiness, inconveniences to be managed until they could be together openly. The depth of their callousness was breathtaking. Amanda complained about Tyler's crude behavior and embarrassing background, while David assured her that once his wife's condition worsened enough to require full-time care, they could begin planning their future together. They spoke about Dylan as a complication, discussing how to minimize Tyler's influence over his own son. Tyler began sleeping separately from Amanda, claiming work stress and early mornings. She seemed relieved rather than concerned, which told him everything he needed to know about the state of their marriage. But he continued playing the role of the oblivious husband, even as he planned their destruction with increasing detail. The ammunition he was gathering would be devastating when deployed correctly. But Tyler wanted more than just a divorce and custody battle. He wanted total victory, complete destruction of everyone who had betrayed him. For that, he would need to be patient a little longer. Chapter 3. The Moment of Truth. The day of Robert Grayson's inheritance announcement arrived with October rain hammering the windows of the family estate. Tyler had been summoned along with Amanda and Dylan for what Robert had cryptically called important family business. The old man's health had been declining rapidly over the past year, and Tyler suspected this was about end-of-life planning. The estate's main parlor was formal and intimidating, filled with dark mahogany furniture and oil paintings of long-dead Graysons. Robert sat behind his massive desk like a judge, with David Hensley standing beside him holding a leather portfolio. The sight of his wife's lover playing the role of trusted family advisor made Tyler's jaw clench, but he kept his expression neutral. Amanda sat with Dylan on the antique sofa, her hand resting possessively on their son's shoulder. She was dressed in a black dress that Tyler recognized as new and expensive, probably bought with money meant for Dylan's college fund. The thought of her using their son's future to impress her lover added another layer to Tyler's growing rage. "Tyler," Robert began, his voice carrying its usual note of barely concealed disdain, "I've asked you here because these decisions affect your son, though they don't directly concern you." Tyler nodded, saying nothing. He'd learned that Robert interpreted silence as weakness, which suited Tyler's current strategy perfectly. Robert gestured to David, who opened the portfolio with practiced efficiency. "I'm distributing my assets among family members," Robert continued. "Amanda will receive 40% of the business interests in the primary estate. My nephew Charles gets 30% and the vacation properties in Aspen and Nantucket. Dylan will receive 20% in trust, managed by David until he turns 25. Tyler felt something cold settle in his stomach. And the remaining 10%. Robert's smile was cruel. "That goes to David for his years of faithful service to this family. He's been more like a son to me than—" The old man's eyes fixed on Tyler with unmistakable contempt. More than someone who married into the family for financial gain. The insult hung in the air like smoke. Tyler watched Amanda's face carefully, looking for any sign of surprise or objection. Instead, he saw only a slight nod, as if she'd expected this outcome. The realization hit him like a physical blow. She'd known about this beforehand. She'd probably helped plan it. Furthermore, Robert continued, his voice gaining strength as he delivered what he clearly considered a killing blow. Tyler will receive nothing. As I've always said, he's not really family. He's an outsider who happened to marry my daughter. Dylan, who had been quietly fidgeting beside his mother, suddenly stood up. The 9-year-old reached into his backpack and pulled out a manila folder that looked official and important. Tyler watched in amazement as his son walked directly to Robert's desk. "Grandma told me to give this to you if you ever excluded Dad again," Dylan announced with the simple clarity that only children possessed. Robert's face went from smug satisfaction to confusion as he took the folder. "What are you talking about, boy? Your grandmother has been dead for 3 years. She gave it to me before she got sick," Dylan explained. "She said it was important and that I should keep it safe until I needed it. She said you try to hurt Dad someday because you never understood what made people strong." Tyler watched his father-in-law's face transform as he opened the folder and began reading. Robert's usual ruddy complexion drained to ash gray, and his hands started trembling. David moved closer to read over his shoulder, and Tyler saw the lawyer's confident expression crumble into something approaching terror. "Where did you get this?" Robert whispered, his voice barely audible. Dylan shrugged with 9-year-old indifference. "Grandma's secret safe in her sewing room. She showed me how to open it and told me this was for Dad if you ever tried to be mean to him." Amanda leaned forward, her face showing the first sign of genuine concern Tyler had seen from her in months. "Daddy, what is it?" But Robert couldn't answer. He was staring at the documents in the folder as if they were a death sentence. David had gone completely pale and was backing away from the desk like he'd seen a ghost. Tyler remained seated, watching the drama unfold with growing fascination. Eleanor Grayson had died of cancer when Dylan was 6, but she'd been lucid and sharp until the very end. Tyler had always suspected she saw through her husband's business dealings more clearly than anyone realized. "Well," Tyler said finally, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "Are you going to share what my son just delivered, or do I need to have my own lawyers examine it?" The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Robert looked up at Tyler with new eyes, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Whatever was in that folder had shifted the balance of power in the room completely. Tyler smiled slowly, showing teeth. For the first time since entering the Grayson family circle, he held all the cards. Chapter 4. Revelations and Recalculations. The silence in the parlor stretched until Robert finally spoke, his voice hollow and defeated. "Eleanor knew," he whispered. "She knew everything." Tyler rose from his chair and approached the desk with deliberate slowness. Up close, he could see sweat beading on Robert's forehead despite the October chill. "Knew what exactly?" David tried to intervene, his lawyer instincts kicking in despite his obvious panic. "Robert, don't say anything else. We need to review these documents privately and—" "Shut up, David," Tyler said without taking his eyes off his father-in-law. His voice carried a quiet menace that made both older men flinch. "I think we're past the point of legal maneuvering." Robert's hands shook as he spread the documents across his desk. Tyler could see bank statements, legal agreements, and what appeared to be correspondence dating back 15 years. His late mother-in-law had been thorough in her documentation. "The shipping business," Robert began, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was never just shipping. We've been moving other things, taking payments from people who needed discreet transport services. Eleanor found out about the money laundering operation 5 years ago." Amanda gasped from the sofa, but Tyler felt only cold satisfaction. Eleanor Grayson had struck him as too intelligent and observant to be completely ignorant of her husband's activities. The old woman had been playing a longer game than anyone realized. "But that's not the worst part," Robert continued, looking directly at Tyler with something approaching respect for the first time in 7 years. "Eleanor discovered that I'd been skimming from Dylan's trust fund to pay for the operation. Your son's inheritance. I've been using it as collateral for illegal loans." The admission hit Tyler like a physical blow, but he kept his expression neutral. His 9-year-old son had just unknowingly revealed that his grandfather was a criminal who'd been stealing his future. The poetic justice was almost overwhelming. David stepped forward desperately. Robert, please. We can fix this. The money can be replaced, and the other activities can be... Can be what? Tyler interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Covered up? Forgotten? You think I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that my son's college fund has been funding your criminal enterprise? He turned to Amanda, who was staring at her father with a mixture of shock and growing understanding. Did you know about any of this? Amanda's silence was answer enough. Tyler studied her face and saw not ignorance, but the careful calculation of someone trying to figure out how much damage control was needed. She'd known something, even if not the full extent. The trust fund can be restored, she said finally, her voice taking on the wheedling tone she used when trying to manipulate him. Daddy made mistakes, but family forgives family. We can work through this together. Tyler laughed, a sound devoid of humor that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Family? You mean the family that just declared I wasn't really part of it? The family that's been stealing from my son while treating me like hired help? Dylan, who had been watching the adult drama with wide eyes, spoke up from the sofa. Dad, are you mad at Grandpa? Tyler's expression softened as he looked at his son. I'm disappointed, Dylan. Very disappointed. But not in you. You did exactly what your grandmother asked you to do. He turned back to Robert and David, his face hardening again. Here's what's going to happen. First, you're going to transfer 51% ownership of all business assets to me, effective immediately. Consider a compensation for the theft and years of disrespect. That's impossible, David protested. The business structure doesn't allow for. Then restructure it, Tyler snapped. You're a lawyer, aren't you? Find a way. Second, Dylan's trust fund will be restored with 20% interest, and control will transfer to me as his father. Robert found his voice again, some of his old arrogance returning. And if I refuse, you'll go to the authorities? Your son would lose everything if this business is destroyed. Tyler's smile was predatory. Who said anything about the authorities? I'm a construction worker, Robert. I know how to make problems disappear permanently. And unlike you, I don't leave evidence lying around for family members to find. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Tyler had learned violence in the military and refined it through years of dealing with difficult subcontractors and union disputes. Both Robert and David understood they were no longer dealing with a respectful son-in-law who had tolerated years of condescension. Amanda stood up abruptly, her face flushed with anger. Tyler, you can't threaten my father. This is still his house, his business. His criminal enterprise, Tyler corrected. And threatening? I'm simply explaining the natural consequences of betraying someone like me. Your father understands, don't you, Robert? Robert nodded slowly, finally recognizing the steel beneath Tyler's working-class exterior. Eleanor had seen it years ago and prepared accordingly. She'd known her husband would eventually push too far and had given her grandson the tools to protect his father. There's one more condition, Tyler added, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. David resigns from all positions related to this family and its business, effective immediately. His services are no longer required. David's face went white as he realized the implications. Without the Grayson account, his law practice would collapse within months. More importantly, his connection to Amanda would be severed permanently. Tyler glanced at his wife, who was staring at David with panic in her eyes. She was beginning to understand that her carefully constructed double life was crumbling around her. The game had changed completely, and Tyler was no longer playing defense. Chapter 5. The Web Titans. 3 days after the inheritance meeting, Tyler sat in his home office reviewing the legal documents that would transfer control of the Grayson Empire to him. David had been forced to draft the papers under threat of exposure, his hands shaking as he signed away everything Robert had spent decades building. But Tyler's real focus was on the evidence he'd been gathering about Amanda's betrayal. The folder from Eleanor had contained more than just proof of Robert's crimes. Hidden among the financial documents were photographs, Amanda and David at various hotels over the past 2 years, time-stamped and dated with Eleanor's meticulous handwriting. The old woman had been documenting the affair long before Tyler had discovered it, preparing for this moment with surgical precision. Tyler's phone buzzed with a text from one of his construction foremen. The message was simple, Package delivered as requested. Tyler smiled grimly as he deleted the message. The first phase of his revenge was now in motion. Amanda entered the office without knocking, her face tight with stress. She'd been trying to reach David all morning, but Tyler had made sure the lawyer would be unavailable for the foreseeable future. David was currently dealing with a sudden inspection from the State Bar Association, triggered by an anonymous tip about ethical violations. The inspection would find exactly what Tyler had arranged for them to find. "We need to talk," Amanda said, closing the door behind her. She was wearing one of her designer outfits, but Tyler could see the strain around her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly when she thought he wasn't looking. "About what?" Tyler asked without looking up from his papers. He wanted her to feel insignificant, unworthy of his full attention. "About what happened with my father. About the business transfer." She moved closer to his desk, her voice taking on the seductive tone she'd once used to manipulate him. "Tyler, I know we've had our problems, but we're still a team. We can use this opportunity to build something amazing together." Tyler finally looked up, his gray eyes cold and emotionless. "We? There is no we, Amanda. There's me, cleaning up the mess your family created, and there's you, pretending you didn't know about any of it." Amanda's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the calculation beneath. "What do you mean by that?" Instead of answering, Tyler opened his laptop and turned the screen toward her. The video showed Amanda and David in what appeared to be Dylan's bedroom at the family cabin, their bodies intertwined on the small bed where Tyler's son had once slept peacefully. Amanda's face went white as she recognized the footage. "Where did you get this?" "I've been documenting your activities for months," Tyler said matter-of-factly. Eleanor wasn't the only one preparing for this moment. "The question is, what were you planning to do after you and David destroy my family?" The video continued playing, showing intimate moments between Amanda and her lover, their whispered conversations about getting rid of Tyler and taking Dylan away from his corrupting influence. Tyler watched his wife's face crumble as she realized how thoroughly she'd been exposed. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered, the lie automatic and pathetic. Tyler stood up slowly, his 6'2" frame towering over her. "It's exactly what it looks like. You've been planning to take my son away from me while stealing everything I've worked for. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I was that weak?" Amanda backed toward the door, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Tyler, please. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but I love you. I love our family. Love." Tyler's laugh was harsh and bitter. "You love your father's money and David's promises about your future together. You love the idea of being wealthy without having to work for it. But you've never loved me, and you sure as hell don't love Dylan enough to protect him from your selfishness." He moved around the desk, backing her against the door. "Here's what's going to happen, Amanda. You're going to pack your things and leave this house tonight. You'll take nothing except the clothes you can carry, and you'll never contact Dylan without my permission." "You can't take my son away from me," she protested, her voice rising with panic. "I'm his mother. I have rights." Tyler's smile was predatory. "Rights? You mean like the right to commit adultery in your child's bed? Like the right to plan his kidnapping with your lover? I have hours of video and audio recordings that show exactly what kind of mother you really are." He opened another file on his laptop, showing bank records of Amanda's secret credit cards and hidden accounts. "I also have evidence of the money you've been stealing from our joint accounts to fund your affair. David's hotel bills, your jewelry purchases, even the abortion you had 6 months ago when you thought the baby might not be mine." Amanda's knees nearly buckled. The abortion had been her deepest secret, the moment when she'd chosen her affair over any possibility of rebuilding her marriage. Tyler had known all along, had been planning this confrontation with methodical precision. "Get out," Tyler said quietly. "Get out before I do something we'll both regret." Amanda fumbled for the door handle, tears streaming down her face. "What about David? What did you do to him?" Tyler's expression didn't change. "David is learning that there are consequences for betraying the wrong person. By tomorrow morning, he'll be disbarred, divorced, and financially ruined. His wife deserves better than a cheating husband, don't you think?" As Amanda fled the room, Tyler returned to his desk and opened another file on his computer. Phase 1 was complete. Amanda was out of his house, and David was neutralized. But Phase 2 would be even more satisfying. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he'd memorized weeks ago. When the voice answered, Tyler's smile was cold and calculating. "It's time," he said simply. "Execute Phase 2. Chapter 6. Checkmate." The next morning brought news that spread through the elite social circles like wildfire. David Hensley had been found in his office at 3 a.m., frantically shredding documents and trying to transfer money to offshore accounts. Unfortunately for him, federal agents had been waiting in his office since midnight, alerted by an anonymous tip about money laundering activities connected to the Grayson shipping business. Tyler watched the news coverage from his construction site office, Dylan sitting beside him eating breakfast before school. His son seemed remarkably unaffected by his mother's sudden departure, which told Tyler everything he needed to know about Amanda's level of involvement in Dylan's life. "Dad," Dylan said between bites of cereal, "is Mom coming back?" Tyler studied his son's face, looking for signs of distress or confusion. Instead, he saw the same clear-eyed intelligence that Eleanor Grayson had possessed. "Do you want her to come back?" Dylan considered the question seriously. "I don't know. She's been sad a lot lately, and she gets angry when you're not around. Maybe she needs to figure out how to be happy again." The wisdom in his 9-year-old son's words struck Tyler like a physical blow. Dylan had been watching his parents' marriage disintegrate and had somehow understood that his mother's unhappiness was destroying their family. Eleanor had chosen her ally well. Tyler's phone buzzed with a call from his lawyer. The federal investigation into the Grayson shipping business had moved with unusual speed, suggesting that someone had provided law enforcement with detailed evidence and documentation. Robert would be arrested within hours, his empire crumbling as investigators froze assets and seized records. But Tyler's revenge was far from complete. He'd spent weeks setting up the next phase, using his construction company's resources and connections to ensure maximum damage to everyone who had betrayed him. Amanda appeared at the construction site just after noon, her usually perfect appearance disheveled and desperate. She'd been staying in a cheap motel since leaving the house, her credit cards frozen by federal investigators looking into the money laundering operation. Tyler watched her approach through his office window, noting the way his workers stopped what they were doing to stare at the clearly out-of-place woman in designer clothes. "Tyler, please," she begged when he finally allowed her into his office. "David's been arrested, Daddy's going to prison, and the lawyers say I might be charged as an accessory. You have to help me. I'm Dylan's mother." Tyler leaned back in his chair, studying her with the same cold assessment he'd use on a building foundation that was about to collapse. "Help you? After everything you've done?" "I know I made mistakes," Amanda continued, desperation making her voice shrill. "But I was confused, lonely. You were never home, always working. David offered me attention, made me feel special. It didn't mean anything." "It meant everything," Tyler corrected. "It meant you were willing to destroy our family for a few moments of feeling special. It meant you were willing to let your father steal from our son while you played house with another man." He stood up and moved to the window, looking out at his construction crew. These were honest men who worked hard for their families, who understood loyalty and commitment. "You want to know the difference between you and them? They know what they have, and they protect it. You threw away everything real for something fake." Amanda moved closer, her hand reaching for his arm. "Tyler, I'm begging you. I'll do anything to make this right. I'll sign any papers you want, give you full custody, anything. Just don't let them destroy me completely." Tyler turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Destroy you? Amanda, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure there were consequences." He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. "Your divorce papers. I'm offering you a choice. Sign them now and walk away with a small settlement. Or fight me in court and lose everything while the federal investigation expands to include your role in the money laundering." Amanda's face crumbled as she realized the extent of Tyler's planning. "You orchestrated all of this. The investigation, David's arrest, everything. I provided law enforcement with evidence of crimes that were actually committed," Tyler clarified. "Your father chose to become a criminal. David chose to help him. You chose to betray your family. I just made sure the truth came to light. 2 years had passed since Tyler's divorce, and Dylan was thriving in his new life. The 11-year-old had grown taller and stronger, showing early signs of inheriting his father's physical presence and mental toughness. His grades were excellent, his friendships healthy, and his relationship with Tyler had deepened into something approaching genuine partnership. Amanda, meanwhile, had descended into a spiral of poverty and desperation that Tyler monitored with clinical detachment. She'd been forced to declare bankruptcy after failing to find stable employment. Her reputation in the business community thoroughly destroyed by Tyler's methodical campaign. She was currently working night shifts at a factory outside the city, living in a studio apartment that Tyler's investigators described as barely habitable. Tyler felt no sympathy for her suffering. In his worldview, consequences were earned through choices, and Amanda was simply experiencing the natural result of her betrayal. But Tyler wasn't satisfied with her mere poverty. He wanted her complete destruction, the kind of total defeat that would serve as a permanent reminder of what happened to those who crossed him. The opportunity for final revenge came through an unexpected source: David Hensley's ex-wife, Patricia. The woman had contacted Tyler through his lawyer, requesting a private meeting to discuss matters of mutual interest. Tyler agreed, curious about what the disgraced attorney's former wife might want from him. Patricia Hensley was a refined woman in her late 40s, her graying hair styled elegantly despite the obvious financial strain of her divorce. She met Tyler at an upscale restaurant, her nervous energy suggesting she was about to propose something significant. "Mr. Brooks," she began after they'd ordered, "I want to thank you for what you did to my husband. I know that sounds strange, but discovering David's affair was actually a blessing. It freed me from a marriage that had been a lie for years." Tyler studied her carefully, noting the intelligence in her eyes and the steel beneath her polite demeanor. "What do you want, Mrs. Hensley?" "It's Patricia now. I've taken back my maiden name, and what I want is justice for both of us." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "David has been writing letters to Amanda from prison. Love letters, promising her that he'll wait for her, that they'll be together when he gets out." Tyler felt his jaw tighten. The idea of David and Amanda maintaining their relationship despite everything that had happened was intolerable. "How do you know about the letters?" "Because I still receive his legal correspondence. We're not divorced yet, just separated pending the completion of his sentence. The prison officials copy me on everything he sends or receives." Patricia smiled coldly. "David thinks he's been clever, but I've been documenting every communication." She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. Copies of every letter he's sent to Amanda over the past 18 months. They discuss plans for when he's released, where they'll live, how they'll start over together. But more importantly, they discuss Dylan. Tyler's blood ran cold. "What about Dylan?" "They plan to take him," Patricia said quietly. "Not kidnapping, exactly, but they want to convince him that you're the villain who destroyed his family. David has been researching ways to challenge your custody, claiming that your methods of obtaining the divorce were illegal or coercive." The envelope felt heavy in Tyler's hands as he opened it and began reading. David's handwriting was precise and lawyerly, but the emotions behind the words were clear. He genuinely believed he and Amanda were victims of Tyler's vindictive persecution, and he was planning to help her reclaim her son once his sentence was complete. "Why are you showing me this?" Tyler asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Because I want David to suffer the way I suffered when I discovered his betrayal," Patricia replied, her voice hardening. "He destroyed our family for a fantasy, and I want that fantasy to become a nightmare. Will you help me?" Tyler studied the woman across from him, recognizing a kindred spirit in her desire for complete revenge. "What did you have in mind?" Patricia's smile was predatory. "David gets out in 5 years. Amanda is barely surviving on her current salary, but she's holding on to hope that David will save her when he's released. What if we made sure that hope turned into the most devastating disappointment possible?" She outlined her plan with the precision of someone who had been thinking about revenge for months. Tyler would use his connections to monitor Amanda's communications and movements, while Patricia would feed David false information about Amanda's loyalty and devotion. When David was finally released, he would discover that the woman he'd been dreaming about had moved on completely, leaving him with nothing. But the real blow, Patricia continued, will be when David realizes that Amanda never loved him at all. She was using him to get access to family money and social status. When those things disappeared, so did her interest in him. Tyler considered the proposal carefully. It was elaborate, requiring years of careful manipulation, but the psychological impact would be devastating. David would lose not only his freedom and career, but also his faith in the one relationship he believed had made his sacrifices worthwhile. "There's one modification I'd like to make," Tyler said finally. "Dylan needs to understand who his mother really is, not just that she chose poorly. I want him to see the evidence of her manipulation and selfishness so he never doubts that I made the right choice in protecting him." Patricia nodded approvingly. A son should know the truth about his parents. David's daughters certainly learned the truth about their father. They shook hands across the table, sealing an alliance built on mutual desire for complete destruction of their betrayers. Tyler felt a familiar sense of satisfaction as he imagined David's face when he finally understood that his 5-year sentence had been only the beginning of his punishment. Tyler Brooks had built his life on the principle that betrayal demanded absolute consequences. Now, he had a partner who understood that principle just as clearly as he did. Chapter 9. Perfect Justice. 5 years later, Tyler stood in the main office of Brooks Industries, the empire he'd built from the ruins of the Grayson shipping business. Dylan, now 16 and nearly as tall as his father, was reviewing college applications at the conference table. The boy had inherited Tyler's work ethic and intelligence, earning straight A's while also excelling in athletics and leadership activities. The final phase of Tyler's revenge was reaching its conclusion. David Hensley had been released from prison 6 months ago, emerging to discover that the world he'd left behind had been completely transformed. His law license was permanently revoked, his assets seized, and his reputation destroyed beyond repair. More devastatingly, Amanda was gone. Patricia Hensley had executed her part of their plan with artistic precision. Through careful manipulation of David's correspondence and strategic leaks of information, she'd convinced the imprisoned attorney that Amanda was waiting faithfully for his return. David had spent 5 years writing love letters to a woman who had stopped reading them after the first year. She reached for the envelope with shaking hands, scanning the divorce settlement terms. Tyler was offering her $50,000 and her personal belongings, a fraction of what she might have claimed in a normal divorce, but more than she'd have after legal fees and potential criminal charges. "If I sign this, what happens to Dylan?" Tyler's expression softened slightly when he mentioned his son. "Dylan stays with me. You can have supervised visitation once a month, assuming you stay out of trouble and prove you can be stable. He deserves better than watching his mother chase after men who make empty promises." Amanda signed the papers with tears streaming down her face, her designer pen scratching across the documents that ended her marriage and sealed her fate. Tyler watched without emotion, feeling only the cold satisfaction of a job completed thoroughly. As she prepared to leave, Amanda turned back one final time. What if I had chosen differently? What if I had ended the affair and tried to save our marriage? Tyler considered the question seriously. Then we wouldn't be here. But you didn't choose differently, Amanda. You chose to betray the people who loved you most. That choice has consequences. After she left, Tyler called Dylan's school to arrange early pickup. His son deserved to hear about the divorce from his father, not from playground gossip or news reports. As he drove to the school, Tyler felt something he hadn't experienced in months: peace. The war was over, and he had won completely. Chapter 7. Rebuilding from Ashes. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Tyler stood in the master bedroom of what had once been the Grayson estate, now legally his property through the business acquisition. The federal investigation had resulted in Robert receiving a 15-year sentence for money laundering and tax evasion. David had plea bargained for 7 years in exchange for his testimony, his law practice destroyed, and his wife successfully filing for divorce with evidence of his infidelity. Dylan was adjusting well to their new living situation, though Tyler had been careful to remove any reminders of the room's previous owners. The boy had started therapy to help process his parents' divorce, but he seemed remarkably resilient. His relationship with Tyler had grown stronger through the ordeal, built on honesty and mutual respect rather than the conditional love he'd received from his mother and grandfather. Amanda had violated the terms of their divorce agreement within 3 months, attempting to contact Dylan directly through social media and trying to turn him against Tyler with sob stories about how his father had ruined her life. Tyler had responded by having her supervised visitation rights revoked entirely, a decision the family court judge supported after reviewing the evidence of her continued manipulation attempts. Tyler's construction business had expanded rapidly with the addition of the shipping company's legitimate assets. He'd sold off the properties connected to illegal activities and used the proceeds to establish a college fund for Dylan that dwarfed what Robert had originally intended. More importantly, Tyler had complete control over every aspect of his and his son's lives for the first time since his marriage began. But Tyler wasn't finished with his revenge. Amanda had found work as a real estate agent in a neighboring city, trying to rebuild her life with a modest apartment and a 10-year-old sedan. She'd attempted to date several men, but Tyler's reputation and connections in the business community made it difficult for her to find anyone willing to risk association with the ex-wife of someone known for his ruthless response to betrayal. Tyler had been patient, but tonight marked the completion of the final phase of his plan. He discovered that Amanda was planning to leave the state, taking a job offer in California where she hoped to start fresh. Tyler couldn't allow her to escape the consequences of her actions so easily. His phone buzzed with a text message, "Package delivered as requested." Tyler smiled as he read the words, knowing that Amanda was about to discover that geography wouldn't protect her from the reputation she'd earned. The package was a comprehensive dossier that Tyler's private investigator had delivered to Amanda's new employer, a detailed account of her role in her family's criminal enterprise, her affair that destroyed her marriage, and her subsequent attempts to manipulate her own child against his father. The California real estate firm would withdraw their job offer by morning, and Amanda's references would ensure that no reputable company would hire her in the future. Tyler had also arranged for Amanda's landlord to receive evidence of her mounting debts and unstable employment history. Her lease would be terminated within the week, forcing her back to staying in cheap motels while she searched for work that would never materialize. Dylan entered the master bedroom, carrying his homework and settling into the reading chair by the window. Tyler had made sure his son felt comfortable in every room of their new home, erasing the memories of his grandfather's dominance and his mother's betrayal. "Dad," Dylan said, looking up from his math problems, "Mrs. Peterson at school asked if I miss Mom. I told her I missed the mom I thought I had, but not the mom she really was. Was that okay to say?" Tyler set down the business documents he'd been reviewing and moved to sit on the edge of the chair. His son's emotional intelligence continued to amaze him, the boy's ability to articulate complex feelings with simple honesty. "That was very wise," Tyler said seriously. "People change, and sometimes we have to accept that the person we loved isn't the person they became. It's okay to miss what we thought we had while being glad we don't have to live with the reality." Dylan nodded and returned to his homework, the conversation complete in the way that only children could manage. Tyler watched his son work, feeling a fierce protectiveness that burned like fire in his chest. Anyone who threatened Dylan's happiness or security would face the same methodical destruction that Tyler had visited upon Amanda, David, and Robert. Tyler's phone rang with a call from his foreman. The latest construction project was ahead of schedule and under budget, a testament to the quality of work that Tyler demanded from his crews. Success was the best revenge against those who had dismissed him as unworthy, but it was also the foundation for the empire he was building for Dylan's future. As he discussed project details with his foreman, Tyler caught sight of himself in the bedroom mirror. The man looking back was harder than the one who had married Amanda 8 years ago, scarred by betrayal but strengthened by victory. He'd learned that mercy was a luxury he couldn't afford when it came to protecting his family. The phone call ended, and Tyler returned to his documents. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight he was content to sit with his son in the house that had once belonged to his enemies, planning the future he'd built from the ashes of their destruction. Tyler Brooks had never been one to forgive or forget, and tonight that fact brought him complete peace. Chapter 8. The Hunter's Patience. Tyler had arranged for Amanda to meet Marcus Webb, a wealthy widower who owned a chain of restaurants in Arizona. Marcus was lonely, generous, and completely unaware of Amanda's history. Tyler had made sure Amanda appeared to be a charming divorcee looking for a fresh start, and a relationship had developed exactly as Tyler had predicted. Amanda had married Marcus within 18 months and moved to Phoenix, where she was now living the comfortable lifestyle she'd always craved. She rarely mentioned her first marriage or her son, telling Marcus only that her ex-husband had been controlling and that custody issues made contact with Dylan complicated. Dylan knew the truth about his mother's new life through private investigators Tyler employed to monitor the situation. The teenager had processed the information with the same clear-eyed pragmatism he'd shown as a child, understanding that his mother had chosen wealth and comfort over any relationship with her son. "She's not a bad person," Dylan had told Tyler after learning about Amanda's remarriage. "She's just weak. She needs someone to take care of her, and Marcus does that better than you ever could. It's probably better for everyone." Tyler was proud of his son's emotional maturity, though he suspected Dylan had inherited Eleanor Grayson's ability to see through people's pretenses. The boy understood that his mother was fundamentally selfish, choosing the path of least resistance regardless of who got hurt. David's release from prison had been carefully orchestrated to maximize his psychological destruction. Tyler had arranged for him to be picked up by a private investigator who delivered the news about Amanda's remarriage along with photographs of her new life. David's reaction had been captured on video, complete emotional collapse as he realized that his 5-year sacrifice had been for nothing. Patricia had been waiting at David's apartment when he arrived, serving him with final divorce papers and eviction notices. She'd spent the prison years rebuilding her life and moving their daughters across the country, ensuring that David would have no family connections to sustain him through his downfall. "He's currently living in a homeless shelter downtown," Patricia reported during her final meeting with Tyler. "He applied for work at several factories and grocery stores, but his criminal record makes him unemployable for anything except manual labor. His daughters have refused all contact, and his former law partners won't return his calls." Tyler felt the deep satisfaction of a plan executed to perfection. David had lost everything: his career, his family, his freedom, and finally his hope. The man who had helped destroy Tyler's marriage was now experiencing the same isolation and desperation that Tyler had once felt, but without the strength and resources to fight back. "Dad," Dylan said from the conference table, looking up from his college applications, "I got into Stanford early admission." Tyler smiled, feeling genuine pride in his son's accomplishments. Dylan had earned this success through his own effort and intelligence, building on the foundation Tyler had provided, but creating his own path forward. "That's excellent news. Are you sure that's where you want to go?" Dylan nodded confidently. "I want to study business and engineering, maybe take over the company someday. But I also want to understand how people like Grandpa and David justify their choices to themselves. Psychology might be useful for recognizing threats before they become problems." Tyler felt a chill of recognition as he heard his own strategic thinking reflected in his son's words. Dylan was becoming the kind of man who could protect himself and his family from betrayal, someone who understood that forgiveness was often just another word for weakness. "What about your mother?" Tyler asked carefully. "Do you want to reach out to her about college? Maybe let her know about Stanford?" Dylan considered the question seriously before shaking his head. "She made her choice when she picked Marcus over staying connected to me. I don't need her approval or her money. Besides, she might try to use my success to make herself look good to her new family." Tyler nodded approvingly. His son had learned the most important lesson of all, that trust, once broken, could never be fully repaired. Dylan would be generous and loyal to those who earned it, but ruthless toward anyone who betrayed him. As the sun set over the city Tyler now dominated, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. Robert Grayson was serving the final years of his sentence, broken by the loss of everything he'd built. David Hensley was homeless and hopeless, destroyed by his own choices and Tyler's patient revenge. Amanda had gotten what she'd always wanted, a wealthy husband and comfortable life, but at the cost of losing her son forever. Tyler had won completely, but more importantly, he'd built something lasting. Brooks Industries would provide Dylan with the resources and power to protect himself against future threats. The lessons Tyler had learned through betrayal and revenge would ensure that his son never suffered the same vulnerabilities. Tyler Brooks had never learned to forgive, and he never would. In his experience, forgiveness was what weak people called their inability to demand justice. He'd chosen a different path, one that led to complete victory over everyone who had ever underestimated him. As Dylan gathered his college applications and headed upstairs to his room, Tyler remained in the office, planning the next phase of his empire's expansion. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight he was content with the knowledge that he'd build a legacy that would protect his family for generations. The boy who'd grown up in a trailer park had become a man who owned the mansion, the business, and the power to destroy anyone who threatened what he'd built. And Dylan would inherit not just the wealth, but the knowledge of how to keep it. Tyler Brooks had learned that in a world full of betrayers and users, the only safety came from being strong enough to make them all pay. It was a lesson he'd pass on to his son, along with everything else he'd fought to build. The war was over, and Tyler had won everything that mattered. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.